Okay, are we ready to get started?
Yes, it's just about to go live, and there it goes. So we are live now.
Okay, and it looks like it's on YouTube, so that's great.
Mhm.
Welcome to our LRTP Advisory Committee meeting for September 23rd. I apologize that I'm not able to be on camera today. I do find that if I'm speaking, I should be on camera, but I'm at home and don't have the Comcast bandwidth with my children using it for school as well. So I apologize for that, but hopefully we can make our way through the agenda. Welcome to everyone. I don't think we have any announcements for new members. Chet, do you want to say something real quick about our new format for the virtual meetings?
Yes, thank you. We are, as I think everybody understands, we're having some issues with figuring out why messages are being hung up for some people, but we've started using the Zoom webinar format, which allows anyone to register as an attendee. And then those of us with speaking roles or members of the committee are promoted to panelists. And the idea, and it's worked for most of the meetings, is that you get a link from us, a one-time thing, and you go in and register for the meeting. And it gives you the ability to add that to your calendar when you register. And then you'll get reminders as you get closer to the meeting date, and everything should populate for each individual. For some reason, that is not working as well as we had hoped, but we're going to stick with it, and we're troubleshooting with our IT provider to figure out why some people aren't getting the messages as easily as others. I'd ask everyone to also please check your spam filters for anything from Zoom individually that may be getting filtered out. That could be part of the problem. But I'd just ask for patience as we move forward. When this is working, it will allow attendees to use the Q&A function, which we don't have with a regular Zoom meeting, to ask questions, to participate during the meeting itself. And that is a big improvement over our previous provision of just requesting emails ahead of the meeting with questions and comments. So I think when we get the technology worked out, it's going to be better for the general public to participate in each meeting.
Thank you, Chet. Appreciate that explanation. And it's good to know that we need to register for these. And as you said, I'm sure that once we get it figured out, it'll be a good system. Next, we're moving on to attendance by roll call. This way we can confirm the quorum as well. Janice?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Miss Smith.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Campbell. Hanover County, Mr. Vadunez. I know that Joe was on there. We'll go back and we'll go back to him. Henrico County, Miss Smidler. I believe that she was on there as well. We'll go back to her. New Kent County, Miss LeDuc.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Powhatan County, Mr. Howland. City of Richmond, Miss Clark. Mr. Bridewell.
Here.
Miss Erickson. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. GRTC, Miss Torres. Miss Robinson. RMTA, Miss Simmons. Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Ride Finders, Miss Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky. Mr. Sparks. VDOT, Ms. McAdory. Mr. Herman,
Here.
BCU, Mr. Leonard,
Present.
NAACP, Mr. Johnson, Richmond Area Bicycling Association, Mr. Burnley, Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Tran, Senior Connections, Mr. Williams, RVA Rapid Transit, Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Bike Walk RVA, Ms. Lockett Gordon,
Here.
Port of Richmond, Ms. Nelson,
Present.
Southern Environmental Law Center, Mr. Pollard, Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities, I'm sorry, we don't have anyone there. Virginians for High Speed Rail, Mr. Plower, Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Rucker, Tri-Cities MPO, Mr. Swakowski.
Here.
Okay, I'm going to circle back to Hanover County, Mr. Vidunez. We may have lost, we may have
Joe's
lost
here.
Joe. I see
see
that he's
Joe.
here, yes. And Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
She's here. She's having issues with her microphone.
Okay,
Emily Doe.
I'm here
also
now. Can you hear me?
yes, good morning.
Okay, great. Good morning. Thank you.
Emily
Okay.
Doe also is here for GRTC.
All right. Okay. Okay, thank you. That concludes the roll call. And Madam Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, it is the consideration of amendments to the agenda. Is there anything we need to add or remove from the agenda? Not hearing any. We'll move on to approval of the August 26th meeting summary minutes. We have a motion to approve those.
Madam Chair, this is John O'Keefe. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
John Leonard, second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the August 26th meeting summary by John O'Keefe and a second by John Leonard. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the public comment period. Chet, do we have any public comment to share for the meeting?
Yeah, we don't have any comments for this meeting.
The next item on the agenda is the LRTP final public engagement period. I believe Barbara Jaycox is going to review this with us.
Chair, I'm going to share my screen.
Yes. Thank you, Sulab. He's got my 2 slides that are part of his PowerPoint.
Here we go.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. I'm glad to be with you. I'm here to report not only on the final public open houses that we held in the libraries in August and September, but just kind of a broad overview of the public engagement process. Of course, this all started back in the end of 2019. As we all know, we went to COVID remote and virtual starting the following March in 20. And so we had to get creative in how we tried to achieve some level of public input that could help us and guide us through this planning process. The LRTP Advisory Committee has been essential to this process, and we really appreciate your sticking with us and helping to promote it within your own localities and agencies. But just to give you a high-level summary, back, we had a total of 3,093 inputs to the community surveys, the wiki maps, to input on vision, goals, and objectives. Had a very healthy debate on what are the issues in the very beginning of the process, and then tying it back to the goals and objectives and some understanding of performance measures and how we would measure our progress in implementing this plan. At the end of this review period, we held 6 public open houses in person at local libraries and the Chesterfield Technical Center. And to be expected, people are still somewhat reluctant to come out. We did find those that did come offered some really great input, and we learned a lot on how we would conduct public hearings or public open houses. We found that being in an active library is really essential because we were able to get library patrons, even those coming to just check out books with their children. So we got a little practice with talking to the kids about planning. I'm hoping I got some recruits from some of those 12-year-olds to go into the planning field. And then also, through our website, we had a pretty healthy view of the page and site sessions where people, searched through and found resources that we hope will be an ongoing website that we'll be able to continue feeding new resources into. Chet also presented at local boards, those that had the time on their agenda, and received input through that process. But during this final public review period, comments online and those that were sent in by the September 15th deadline, we had 34 sets of comments. And those were very varied, lots of compliments, as well as some very, some critical assessment of the plan itself, which we really took to heart and have worked diligently since the close of that period to address those. And that's what's represented on the next page, on the next slide. So the responses, how we have responded to these public comments through the draft. Many of you have taken a look at it online. I think the very diligent effort that we've tried to make it a streamlined, very readable document. We heard a lot of compliments there that it was readable, that it is, there's a lot of detail. It's contained in those technical documents. And we tried to also make it very digitally friendly so that there'd be more external links to information that, may not be possible to include unless you have a 1,000-page document. We ended up, with 120 pages of a streamlined document. But building into that, we found some areas where we needed to strengthen in the executive summary, better links to what is the ultimate objective, the vision, goals, and objectives, and how do they relate to the performance measures, and what is the end product, the constrained project list with a map link, just right at the very beginning, so people know where to go if they want to get to the real end result without getting into the thorough review of the plan. We also provided an introduction in Chapter 3 to the issues inventory so that folks would understand the full range of issues and resources that we used. We tapped some 41 different sources, plans, studies, corridor studies, on a multitude of planning projects that have been done by the localities and agencies, as well as getting significant input from you all and from our champions and public input. We established better links to the constrained project list by project type and mode, so you can look at it. And this will all be coming out in the very final draft in Chapter 6. So you're not just looking at a very long laundry list of 210 different projects that are contained in the constrained project list, but you'll be able to look at it within project type and mode as well. We provided a better explanation in Chapter 7 on the vehicle miles traveled, and also included that in the technical document with more specific language that addresses how that was calculated. We also, in response to public comments directly, provided better explanation of environmental benefits and impacts, adding language on floodplains, carbon sinks, and what other pollutants were part of our performance measures. And also emphasizing the importance and impacts of scenario planning, which is what we'll launch into the next phase of this really robust and ongoing planning effort. I think it will only make it stronger as we move into the 2050 plan in the next phase. And so that's essentially just trying to make it more readable, more user-friendly, so that you can use it, online, or you can go to the website and see a lot of resources that are available, not only on the website, but in previous studies with those links. And the technical documents, there's some 1,000 pages of technical documents. A lot of effort has gone into performance measures and measuring the outcomes and how effective this plan could be for the region as a whole. So with that, I would entertain any questions that any of us on the team can help answer. If you have questions about public input or what you've heard from your own constituents or board members or agency team. Are there any questions?
Barbara, Ben Campbell, hi.
Hi, Ben.
There were some public comments about the omission of specific information about the increase in pollution due to more automobile traffic and road building.
Correct.
That is a fact and should be stated if the society decides that's worth doing. Of course, that's the society's business, but it shouldn't be hidden.
Correct. And we did address what, and I might ask Sulab if he wants to elaborate some more, but we did, and that was definitely pointed out by Southern Environmental Law Center and others who commented on as far as the pollutants that we were using, that we were looking at as far as the performance measures for the environmental impacts. Sulab, do you want to?
Yeah, so the
add to that?
the environmental benefit calculation, which we did, was pretty much limited only to a couple of pollutants, which have been historically a problem in the Richmond region. But we acknowledge the fact in the document that it's much more broader than that. And due to the work being beyond the scope of this project, we are not able to calculate other pollutants like the carbon greenhouse emissions or other things which impact environment. So that has been acknowledged in the in Chapter 7 as well as in the technical document.
Are there any other?
That's a pretty serious omission in terms of our experience as a society. I'm sorry we can't do it. You've done a good job on the other stuff.
Are there any other comments or questions? Well, thank you so much for your input, and I think it only makes the next, the next phase and research that goes into the 2050 plan and through the scenario planning, it'll make it much stronger. So we appreciate your time and effort being part of this committee and offering input.
Thank you, Barbara
Mhm.
and Sula. The next item on the agenda is the Connect RVA 2045 overview. Mr. Parsons?
Yes, thank you very much. We gave this presentation to the policy board last month, and well, earlier this month, and I'm want to provide it here again for those who have not been able to see that. Let me see if I can share my slides. I can't ever do this right. Does the full screen share now?
No.
How about that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is an overview of the long-range plan. This is a draft that does not address some of the concerns that Barb mentioned that were being incorporated now. Most of those updates are text-based, but a few of them are significant, including the listing of the constrained plan projects in the document itself that are organized by category and the like. I did want to just, as I get into this, I wanted to applaud everyone that was able to submit comments during this final public review period. I think that it's especially worth highlighting for me the comments received from Southern Environmental Law Center. I know that Tripp was not able to attend today, but the feedback was very constructive, and it highlighted a number of the things that we know we missed in this plan, but it gives us a great foundation to be moving forward. I think that in general, the plan itself is a big improvement over the previous plan. And I'm trying not to be biased, but I feel like the data-driven decision-making and the other things that have been incorporated this time around set us on the right path. We know that it's not the perfect plan, and it's something that we need to improve on, and that's the plan moving forward. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start through. So the plan itself is it's like any other comprehensive plan, honestly, a county comprehensive plan, a land use plan, others. It's identification of issues, developing vision, goals, and objectives, something that can be strived for. In this plan, we developed what we call a universe of projects, which is an understanding of all of the possible solutions that could help meet the needs that were identified in the first phase. The new component here is scoring, ranking, and prioritizing. We developed a process, as you all know, through 15 different performance measures that is data-driven and gives us an objective way to score each project in terms of its impacts to the overall network, and then rank and prioritize those projects according to a cost-benefit analysis. As part of the metropolitan planning process, we are required to develop a plan that is cost feasible, meaning we look at our future horizon year, this time is 2045, and develop budgets for what funds from different sources are expected to be over the life of the plan, and then assemble a constrained list of projects that fits within that budget. So taking the universe of projects, we applied the known budget, and we're able to fine tune a prioritized list of projects that met that budget need and can be expected to be built during the planning horizon year, which is the next 20 years. We incorporated, again this time, a big improvement in evaluation of project impacts and how it benefits the system. We know that this is the first time we've done it, so there's room for improvement and addition of other ways to evaluate. And we're excited about fleshing that out as we move forward over the next few years. And then, as Barb mentioned in the previous section, we have a multitude of technical appendices of the plan that provide the background on how the process worked, how the scoring, ranking, and prioritization was assembled and done, the model and GIS-based analysis that was performed, as well as all of the public involvement that took place virtually and in person over the last 22 months. So the vision was that this group decided on was the transportation system in the region will reliably and safely connect people, prioritize more equitable opportunities for all to thrive and live healthy lives, promote a strong economy, and respect environmental stewardship. We had 5 goals that were developed. The first was safety. The second, environment and land use. The third, around equity and accessibility. The fourth, focused on economic development. And the fifth was mobility. And as we could see, and it's reflected in the plan this way, under each goal, there were objectives that really set forward the way to use data to evaluate our progress towards each of these goals. And that's something that we were able to do as we evaluated individual projects. Some of the changes that have taken place both before this plan and now that the plan is close to being adopted. Before the plan, we depended on just a handful of options for funding for improving projects. The first and primary source was federal and state allocations, which is typically an 80%, 20% split between federal and state dollars. Smart Scale is a program in Virginia that allows project sponsors to apply for a limited amount of funds. We have performed okay in the Central Virginia region in terms of Smart Scale returns. But the third bullet there, Virginia Regional Authorities, before this plan, there were 2. There was one in Northern Virginia and one in Hampton Roads. Those 2 regions that had the authorities in place got a better response from Smart Scale because they were able to leverage local dollars and regional dollars to help offset some of the costs of their project applications. While this plan is being developed, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority came into being, and it collects taxes in a couple different areas, and revenues go to 3 different pots. The first is a 50% local pot, which goes directly back to member governments. The second is a 35% regional pot, which goes towards regionally significant projects. And this is timely right now. And then the third pot is that 15% of the revenues collected go to GRTC directly to go towards services and studies that benefit the region and benefit public transportation in the region. So now that we're getting ready to hopefully adopt the long-range plan, CVTA has been identified as a funding partner in that budgeting for the future amount of dollars that we could expect. It gives us stability to compete with Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads for other sources of funds. And it also gives us leveraging capability to move projects forward quicker than we were able to before. So hopefully that means that this plan will be amended more often than every 5 years so that we can add new projects and take completed projects off. So that's an exciting opportunity for the region. Going back to the beginning, as we identified the issues, we looked at a number of different things, starting with a review of all the regional and local plans and studies that have been developed by member governments as well as other agencies, and took recommendations from this body when that review was taking place. We looked at any issues that may have popped up through the travel demand model in terms of congestion, hotspots, those kinds of things. And we ended up canvassing 41 distinct plans, reports, and studies at different levels that had not been resolved. So a lot of the potential universe of projects came from those plans. In all, we identified over 1,000 transportation issues for the region. Roughly half of those went through the eligibility criteria that this group was involved in setting and were considered regionally significant and could be included in the long range plan. And then we had another 272 issues that were identified that related less to a concrete project and more to policy and programs, justification for additional study, or local issues. And then speaking to public engagement, we had 135 issues that were shared directly by the public as part of this project. Barb went through this earlier, but we had a lot of different engagement through the life of the plan, through each phase of the process development, all the way from what the priorities should be to the vision and goals to mapping issues on a wiki map, to vision statement ideas, and then finally comments on the universe of projects. A quick summary of some of that feedback. The transportation priorities are ranked on the left side according to the feedback we got. Had over 500 completed surveys relating to those priorities. And then we did the classic, if you had $100 to spend, how would you allocate it? And that output is shown on the right side of the screen in terms of maintenance, bike ped, infrastructure, transit expansion, passenger rail, and moving on down the list. So once we knew what we had in front of us in terms of a universe of projects, we need to consider what makes a project regional. And the eligibility for different projects to be included in the plan was set so that we could have a filter that narrows down that list of projects between what could be considered regional and what was more local in nature. So by mode, we were able to start paring down that list with different criteria. For example, transit, any new transit centers were considered regional in nature. Park and ride facilities, if there was a net increase of 100 spaces or more, whether that's a new lot or an expansion of an existing lot, that was considered regional in nature. For bike pedestrian, projects had to be part of a multi-jurisdiction network or related to that network, or filling significant gaps in an existing network. And then anytime you could directly connect and support transit service, that would also give points to a bike ped project to be regional. Roads were major updates or changes, including interchanges and modifications, major arterial intersection improvements, adding or removing lanes, or changing the use of those lanes. Intermodal, new or relocated rail stations or major improvements, or capacity changes in those corridors that connect regional hubs like the marine terminal, the airport, major rail yards, et cetera. And then bridges, any bridge that is shown on the National Bridge Inventory that showed to show significant deterioration, the replacement rehab of those bridges was a regional priority. Thinking that then in terms of how we're going to get there, the budget itself, we have to develop this fiscally constrained plan. And part of what we do is project out revenues from all major sources of funding in cooperation with our state and federal partners, so VDOT, DRPT, GRTC, CVTA, all of those expected revenues that were coming in were summarized, and a quick summary of that is shown on the right side of the screen here. But what it comes down to is once you get past maintenance and operations, the 20-year budget is around $5.5 billion for the regionally significant projects that were identified as part of this process. Thinking about it a couple different ways, taking a step back, if you include your maintenance and operations and not just the project list, highway maintenance is about 41% of the total funds available. Construction for highways is about 26%. Transit, 16%. Flexible funds, which could be applied to multiple different modes and needs, is about 12%. State of good repair is your bridge category. That's about 4%. And then active transportation is about 1% of the total budgeted available funds. Thinking just a little bit more about transit, this was a question that came up at the policy board earlier this month. The second column there that's labeled transit, about 13% of funds were specific to transit. That is included in that 16% from the last pie chart. The 58% is on the first column is flexible, and then 27% was direct from CMAQ. So transit funds itself are shown as about 13% of that pie piece.
But Chet, those are not capital funds, are they, for transit? Aren't those operating funds? I mean,
Some of them are, some of them aren't. Yes. It's a combined summary.
I'm just saying it says capital funding breakdown, and most of the money that comes from CVTA to GRTC has to be operating funds.
Yes. Yes, you're right. This is a capital table.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification. Moving forward, this is a map that was shared. We developed a story map as part of the public outreach once the constrained list was known. This is a distribution of all of the projects that are in that constrained project list across the region. So this is on the project website as part of that larger story map. And then looking at a breakdown of projects across modes. As part of the universe of projects, there were 34, and I'll just summarize, there were 34 active transportation projects, meaning bike and ped, that were deemed to be regionally significant. We were able to include all but one of those in the cost possible list. Bridges, all of the bridges that were regionally significant were included. About 80% of the highway projects were included in the final cost feasible list. All of the park and rides, and then about half, just over half of the transit projects were included, with the understanding that the other 5 projects were incremental improvements to BRT. Once we show that frequency improvements are continuing the trend that we think it will, that more people will be riding transit over the next few years. If we increase the frequency, then we can come back and amend the plan to look at taking the next step up from 15-minute frequency to full BRT infrastructure. The rail that's shown there, it shows 0 under the cost possible projects. That is because rail funding is statewide in nature, and we weren't able to get a subset of what that possible budget would be for our region. So we weren't able to compare apples to apples with possible rail funding, but we'll work closely with DRPT and the Virginia, the new authority, to make sure that rail projects continue to move forward in our region, just like everywhere else in the state. The next few slides are on the evaluation that I mentioned earlier. We're able to now, because all of the ranking and prioritization is data driven, we're able to evaluate the impacts of projects on the network. And for most of these 5 different categories, we looked at it in 3 different scenarios. The first is a base, which is essentially today. The second is a no build, meaning we would take any projects that are included in the 6-year improvement program and committed through that and project that improvement out to 2045. But basically just what's existing plus what's already committed. And then the build is full implementation of all the projects that are in this constrained plan. So in terms of highway, we saw improvements. We decreased congestion on major arterials in the region. We saw a decrease in regional travel time overall. Mode share did not see a big change. It's still a majority of auto trips. but we see with increasing frequency of the network in terms of transit that the mode share would increase over time. And then VMT per capita, we saw a reduction of almost 25 million miles annually when you look at full regional travel. Transit, we saw a ridership increase of 31% around the region, as well as a personal miles travel increase by 58%. And what that tells us is people rode transit somewhat more, that 31%, but they also rode it for longer distances. So the increases to the network, the addition of the new BRT route from the downtown up to Ashland, plus the frequency improvements showed that people stayed on the bus longer and used it to travel farther distances around the region. The BRT I mentioned, we increased our premium transit miles from 8 to 23 with the addition of that route. And then coverage does not expand dramatically because of our expected shifts in key population outward from the center city to areas that aren't currently served by transit. So that tells us that we need to continue working with GRTC and member governments to identify those areas that need service that don't have it now and work to expand that network. Bridges, all 16 structurally deficient bridges are included in the constraint list. We saw park and ride lots increasing from a count of 8 to 22, which is a total of 2,600 additional spaces. And then we increase dedicated active transportation mileage by 53 miles around the region. And most of that is attributed to the fall line. In terms of savings, we were able to monetize based on different criteria that you see on the left. Savings, assuming that this is in 2045, we see a total savings of over $600 million because of the added projects in the constrained list. Economic impact, this is assuming full implementation of the plan. So we're looking at once we get to 2045, this is the economic impact. Almost 95,000 jobs created, 2.8 billion in direct wages, and then a $15 billion direct impact to the GDP of the region. Again, this is once we get all these projects implemented. Environmental justice, we established equity emphasis areas looking at 6 key criteria that are census-based. We were able to develop multipliers to apply to census geography to ID the project relationships to the equity emphasis areas. So anything in pink on the map is an area that was identified as an EEA. Just demographically, 32% of the regional population is within those pink areas, the EEAs. 63% of the constrained projects serve those areas, and almost 60%, 59% of the dollars serve those areas. So if you look at per capita transportation investment, almost twice as much money goes per person to people that reside in the equity emphasis areas, as opposed to all projects. And that also equates, if you look at the chart on the bottom right, 132 projects serve equity emphasis areas out of the total 210. Accessibility, we see a net gain in accessibility, jobs and destinations reachable by mode within a reasonable travel time. And those destinations include things like markets, healthcare facilities, schools, colleges, government centers, libraries, and parks. We look at travel time by trip purpose. We see a general savings, and this is just highlighting one point in the off-peak hours between assuming no build and implementation of all the projects of 10 seconds, which equates to 14,000 hours of travel region-wide in terms of time savings. and access to transit by walking and biking with different levels of travel time does increase. And we it's incremental, but it does show an increase. So that's something we're looking forward to tracking, especially as more projects get implemented and we work with member governments to make sure that those gaps are filled in existing networks. So the next steps, we're close. The draft plan and the draft plan review period, the last 30-day period ended September 15th, and that's what Barb reviewed earlier. The policy board is considering adoption scheduled for Monday, October 4th. We will continue to, as staff, coordinate with the Central Virginia Transportation Authority and assist the CVTA in determining regionally significant projects. We want to, I mentioned earlier, assess the plan regularly and revise and update. I'm excited about that. We haven't been able to do that before. And then we want to create a better plan. So we already have lots of ideas for next steps, and we want to start soon after this adoption to take the next steps and improve and include some of those criteria that were mentioned in the public review, some of the other environmental indicators that we weren't able to include this time, and continue public engagement, improve that, and work closely with each of you to make sure that we serve the needs of the region. With that, Madam Chair, I probably went over, but I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions or comments for Chet?
Chet, I've been involved with a number of these in the past, and I'm very pleased at the process that you and your team followed. It's been very well organized. You covered a lot of ground and brought a lot of projects in together. And overall, I'm pretty pleased with the whole process. So thanks go out to you and your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? All right, moving on. Shit, I don't have a agenda. There we go.
So, hey, Nora, this is Ben Campbell. I'd like to say the graphics
Go
on
ahead.
this thing and the presentation is the visual presentation is really excellent. It's clear, and an ordinary human being can actually read it. And so that's a real step for folks.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is the Connect RVA 2045 process recap. Sulam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just gonna go pretty briefly about the process recap. Chair has covered almost everything. This is just a recap for the advisory committee. This is our 15th long range transportation planning advisory committee meeting. We started December of 2019, and we went through a number of processes. I just wanted to give a recap of everything. So you all are familiar with this LRTP process flow, and we have basically 6 phases in the plan: the transportation needs assessment, then we go to the strategic direction, planning, programming, evaluation, and then finally adoption. So task 1 was basically transportation needs assessment. The task objective was to identify regional, local, multimodal transportation issues. We had several public input opportunities. We started with community outreach meetings before COVID hit. So we were able to conduct a few meetings during the February-March timeframe in 2020. But after that, we are not able to actually go to the in-person outreach meetings, but we had a number of virtual opportunities. And then we had the issues interactive mapping, which is basically the wiki maps in which people could actually point out the transportation issues. Once everything was done, we had a formal comment period in May. And the product of this task was the regional and local multimodal transportation issues inventory, which was approved by the LRTP Advisory Committee on May 28, 2020. The second task, strategy direction, was basically to develop vision, guiding principles, and goals for the LRTP. And along with that, also to develop objectives and performance measures within each goal, which would provide the technical mechanism or the data-driven approach to which we can actually measure the achievement towards the goal and overall vision. So we had 3 public input opportunities in this task. Vision survey, which was basically asking for 2 words in which people want to see what Richmond would become in 2045. Then we had the regional goals and priorities survey, and then the vision goals and strategy survey. So all these surveys, we had a tremendous outcome. A lot of public participated in this. And this was a long process. We went through, we started this with the LRTP Advisory Committee, went back to the public, gathered public comments, came back to the LRTP Advisory Committee, went to the policy board for a briefing, then came back to the LRTP Advisory Committee, and then finally went to the policy board for approval. So a long process. The formal public comment period was in December. The final product, as we all know, is a vision, 7 guiding principles, 5 goals, objectives within each goals, and 15 performance measures for the Connect RV 2045. The policy board approved this on February 4, 2021. The third step is planning. The task objective is basically to develop a project inclusion guidelines, so we can define what is regionally significant and what is a local programmatic project. And then the other main objective was to develop a streamlined list of regionally significant multimodal transportation projects, which we call the universe of projects. We had a formal public comment period. The first phase was March 8 to 23rd, and based on public responses, we extended the period from March 25 to April 15th. So overall, a 38 days of public comment period for this phase. As we all know, the product is the universe of regionally significant multimodal transportation projects. This was approved by the LRTP Advisory Committee on April 22nd of this year, and then the policy board acted on it on May 6th. The fourth phase, which is the programming, the task objective was to develop a project evaluation and scoring process, data-driven, performance-based process, which took a lot of time to develop, to score and rank the universe of regionally significant process, and then finally develop the fiscally constrained list of regionally significant projects. So this was the most time-consuming step or process for staff to complete. We had 1 public input opportunity, the budget allocation survey, which was from April 15th to May 15th. And then the formal comment period was from June 2nd to June 17th. The final product was the fiscally constrained projects list for the Connect RV 2045. The LRTP Advisory Committee approved on this on June 24th, and then the policy board approved on July 1st, 2021. The final, the fifth phase is evaluation. The task objective was to systematically evaluate the performance of the financially constrained plan through quantitative metrics in 5 broad categories: system-wide performances, transportation savings, economic impact analysis, environmental justice analysis, and accessibility analysis. And the other task objective was to conduct a regional air quality conformity assessment to demonstrate that we are compliant with the Clean Air Act. The formal public comment period basically for the air quality conformity was from July 9th to 24th. The product is basically the evaluation matrices, which we presented of all the 5 system-wide evaluation, which we conducted for the Connect RV 2045 constraint plans performance, and then the air quality conformity assessment report. The approval basically for the air quality conformity was approved by the policy board on August 5th. And then now we are on the final task, which is adoption, which is not much work in staff's end, but the task objective is basically to seek public input regarding the overall planning process and the draft plan documents, to adopt the plan. And then finally, once the plan is adopted by the policy board, to transmit the plan to Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. The formal public comment period, August 16th to September 15th, we just completed that. And the product of this task is basically the Connect RV 2045 documents, including 13 technical documentations, as well as the website presence and the story map. And the expected approval for this is the LRTP Advisory Committee today. And once the LRTP Advisory Committee approves this, we'll go to the policy board on October 4th, 2021. So this is a very brief overview of the process for the long range transportation plan. The 6 tasks, which we had tried to make it simple. And I think that's it. I'll be happy to answer any question regarding the process recap for the long range transportation plan.
Thank you, Sulabh. Does anyone have any questions or comments? It's helpful to show where we've been. Okay. There aren't any questions or comments. The next item on the agenda is the LRTP task number 6, which is the adoption. So we're being requested to adopt the Connect RVA 2045 advisory, or to recommend to the TPO policy board approval of the Connect RVA 2045 plan.
So I have a couple of slides before we formally ask that. So, so as we all know, this is the last phase or the part for the long range transportation plan, task 6 adoption. Just to remind everybody, the federal and state requirements, the federal requirement requires the Metropolitan Organization to develop the long range transportation plan every 4 or 5 years. We fall in the 5-year category. The Code of Virginia also supports that in the Code of Virginia. And the current long range transportation plan, which we called Plan 2040, was adopted on October 6, 2016, and it expires on October 6, 2021. So we need to have the new plan before that this previous plan expires. And then the last slide, looking back to look ahead, I was involved in as a teammate in last 3 plans, Plan 2035, Plan 2040, and Plan Connect RV 2045. So just wanted to do a comparison of all those 3 plans. 2035, the base year was 2008, just before the recession. Plan 2040 was 2012, just after the recession, and for Connect RV 2045, it's 2017. The project prioritization process, which has been the key to the long range transportation plan, Plan 2035 was the first plan in which we actually scored project. It was a goal-based subjective method. Then for the Plan 2045, we developed a goal-based objective method, which was kind of data-driven, but it still had wasn't really performance-based. It looked at the existing conditions of the network rather than what would be the benefit of the project. And then in Connect RV 2045, the project prioritization process were totally performance-based, based on what the outcome of the projects would be. The constrained budget, 2008, $1.2 billion. 2012, $1.7 billion, a little bit increase. And that increase was basically attributed to the addition of DRPT financial projection, which wasn't included in the previous plan. And it was only limited to first 6 years. For Connect RV 2045, we see a big increase of $5.8 billion. That's basically because of the regional funds through CVTA, which we have now, which we didn't have earlier. The per capita spending, $1,200 in Plan 2035, $1,729 Plan 2040, and then a big rise of almost $5,500 per capita transportation investment spending for Connect RBA 2045. And I think we want to strive more in the future plan. With saying that, I guess I would like formally ask the Long Range Transportation Plan Connect RBA 2045 Advisory Committee to recommend LRTP Policy Board approval of the Connect RBA 2045 plan at their October 4, 2021 meeting.
Thank you, Sulab. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I think we covered it pretty thoroughly. Would anyone like to make a motion?
This is John Leonard. I so move.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Dirona Clark, City of Richmond, second.
Thank you, Dirona. So we have a motion by John Leonard to recommend the Connect RVA 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan to the RTPO Policy Board for their approval. And that was a motion by John Leonard and a second by Dirona Clark. Ms. Firestone, do you mind taking a roll call vote on this?
Yes, ma'am. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Miss Smith.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunez.
Aye.
Henrico County, Miss Smidler.
Aye.
New Kent County, Miss LeDuc.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Miss Clark.
Aye.
GRTC, Miss Del Ross. Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
VDOT, Mr. Herman.
Aye.
PCU, Mr. Leonard.
Aye.
RVA Rapid Transit, Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Bike Walk RVA, Miss Lockett Gordon. Port of Virginia, Miss Nelson.
Aye.
And Tri-Cities MPO, Mr. Swikowski.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Ms. Firestone, I see an aye in the chat from GRTC, Ms. Del Ross.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll note that.
I'm not
And-
sure about Louise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I said
And
aye.
thank you to
Is
everyone
my
on
audio
the-
out?
Yes, I'm sorry. Who was, I didn't catch who that was that just
Sorry,
spoke.
this was Lockett Gordon. I said aye. Sorry if my
Okay,
audio went
great.
out.
Thank you. I'll note that.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for your participation on this committee and to staff's hard work on this plan and moving us through it. Our next meeting is October 28th, and I believe that'll be our final advisory committee meeting. And we'll be getting the information out on that. Anything else? Chet or Sulab, everyone? Good.
No, thank you all so much for all of your hard work over these past months. This is a great achievement, and we're looking forward to starting the improvements on it October 5th, assuming everything goes well.
All right. Well, thank you. And our meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.